Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. Today's podcast will mainly be on Lue Elizondo's new book, Imminent. But first, I'd like to update you on recent developments that might bring the Nazca mummies to the United States for further study. Okay, I found this on the dailymail.com, and it's an exclusive. The title of the article is U.S. Congress to Investigate Controversial Peru Alien Mummies Amid Fears They Could Be Linked to UFOs. And this article is by Matthew Fallon. He's a senior science reporter for the dailymail.com. I'm just going to peruse the first few paragraphs here. And the article starts by saying, Peru's famous alien mummies are set for the U.S., where Congress has pledged to crack the mysterious cases once and for all. And the person involved in this is none other than Tim Burchett, which has been leading the charge for further transparency on UAPs. The Republican Tim Burchett, the article goes on to say, known for his outspoken criticism of the U.S. government's UFO secrecy, vowed to assemble the most important people in the world to examine the bodies, which some scientists claim harbor 30% unknown DNA. The congressman said he would initiate his new analysis at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, in his home state. Here's a picture of one of the mummies here. But Representative Burchett had caveats to his promise to help scientifically analyze the 7 and counting so-called tridactyl mummy specimens, which Maussan maintains could be extraterrestrial, but analysis must be independent of the federal government. Okay, that's Jaime Maussan, known for his revelations with the Nazca mummies at the last UAP hearing in Mexico. And though Representative Burchett has not called the bodies alien yet, his plan is sure to spark further akin to the firestorm that accompanied the mummies' debut before Mexico's Congress last September. And that was when Jaime Maussan revealed the Nazca mummies. It was during their version of our UAP congressional hearing. Legal experts also told DailyMail.com that despite Representative Burchett's best efforts, U.S. treaty agreements with Peru could delay transnational shipping of the eerie remains. So there's a possibility that this may be difficult to actually do. The article goes on to say the Republican lawmaker made his pledge to veteran Mexican broadcast journalist and prolific UFO researcher Jaime Maussan in a new interview. And during the interview, Burchett said, I will gladly help you find someone that would analyze them. I would also be interested in getting some people to analyze those bodies that are independent of the federal government, the congressman added, echoing myriad past comments in which he has accused federal officials of a UFO cover-up. So you can see there that Tim Burchett doesn't necessarily trust the government when it comes to UFO transparency. Tim Burchett went on to say, we will look for the most important people in the world right here in Tennessee. The University of Tennessee, Knoxville, the school that the congressman referenced as a likely candidate for this work, is home to an internationally recognized center for the forensic examination of human remains. It's nicknamed the Body Farm. So even though it's in Tennessee, which most people wouldn't expect the Nazca bodies to go directly to, it is well known for specializing in forensic examination of human remains. Last December, the U.S. Department of Justice R&D agency, the National Institute of Justice, awarded 2 grants to the farm, more formally known as UT's Forensic Anthropology Center, totaling more than $580,000. So they do have the money. Here's a picture of Tim Burchett during his interview with Jaime Maussan, where he vowed to assemble the most important people in the world to finally crack the mystery of Peru's infamous alien mummies. And he made that pledge to the infamous Mexican journalist and UFO researcher Jaime Maussan, who's also been known for hoaxing in the past. So we'll see, folks. It's the newest development. They're going to try and bring them over here for study, see how that goes. Okay, so besides an update on the Nazca mummies, I'd like to also do an update on why UAP disclosure isn't happening or isn't happening sooner, or why is there a pushback against UAP disclosure. So I thought this was an interesting post by r/UFOs SNOO-26902. So this post looks into the question of why is there a pushback against UAP disclosure? And it also points out that the US is spending $2 trillion on nuclear weapons that could possibly end the world. And the post is connecting that to why Congress will not do much about UFO disclosure. And anyone in the UFO community knows that UFOs have a particular interest for weapon sites. And this post says that it's interesting that one of our very anti-disclosure congressmen, maybe the leader of that mob, Representative Mike Turner, has been a relentless advocate of modernizing the nuclear arsenal. This goes on to say, so now we know the likely main reason they are against disclosure. They know the UFOs, wherever they're from, wherever they are, have been vitally interested in nuclear weapon sites. They do not want that $2 trillion boondoggle going away. And it says here that Bechtel, General Dynamics, Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman are disturbed by UFO disclosure because they think that it might just make us realize the anti-nuke premise of the UFOs, and they will do everything in their power to keep the money flowing. Now, the most alarming thing is that the U.S. Defense Department is upgrading the nuclear ballistic missile program by $2 billion. That's incredible when there's so much suffering and hunger in this country. Why Mike Turner would be pushing that and trying to discourage UAP disclosure at the same time. But I can see how both would go hand in hand. Mike Turner doesn't want UAP disclosure because UAP disclosure would also disclose that the UFOs or UAPs are trying to discourage these nuclear weapons. And just to corroborate that theory that UFOs are attracted to nuclear missile weapons or nuclear sites, here's Lue Elizondo talking about how his organization used to try to trap UFOs by setting off nuclear detonations.
At one point, if you will, a trap set up to collect information on these UAP. I can only talk about it because I've now had approval by the Pentagon to talk about it. It has now been cleared for me to talk about it. But we had a plan to set up a real big nuclear footprint, something we knew would be irresistible for these UAP. And then once we started seeing these UAP, the trap would be sprung.
Not only did Lue Elizondo try and trap UFOs with nuclear detonations, but he also came out and publicly claims that the U.S. government has and knows about UAP materials and is in possession of them. Found this in the dailymail.com, and it's an article by Josh Boswell, and it includes a clip of Elizondo saying that he's certain Pentagon has material from crashed non-human spacecraft.
I remember distinctly a conversation I had with Dr. Lakatsky during the early time when he was, I think, assessing me is probably what they were doing, see if I would be a good fit. And I remember him very distinctly at the end of the conversation. He pulled his glasses down and he looked over his glasses at me and he said, "What do you think about UFOs?" And I paused for a moment and I responded truthfully. I said, "I don't." And he said, "Well, do you not believe in them?" And I said, "No, I didn't say that. You asked me if I thought about what do I think about UFOs, and I said I don't. I don't have I don't have the luxury to think about them. I'm too busy, trying to chase bad guys and make things work. And he said to me, he said, well, that's fair enough, but don't let your own personal bias get the best of you, because what you may learn here, may challenge any preconceived notions or narratives that you have. And that's really when I first learned what this program was about. We were getting multiple reports, a lot of reports of UAP. We call them UAP now, but in the vernacular, UFOs were being encountered over controlled U.S. airspace and theaters of combat, and were posing, in some cases, a flight safety risk to our pilots. Now, what do I mean by that? So we have reports and videos, in some cases, of these UAP, UFOs, splitting a combat formation. Now, if you know what a combat formation is, these aircraft fly very close to each other in a combat scenario, right? So they're like this. When you have a UAP splitting the formation, that's problematic. Furthermore, we have countless reports of these things being encountered over controlled U.S. airspace, over sensitive military facilities and installations, and we had no idea where these things were from. The origin, we had no clue. Their performance characteristics were stunning. These were beyond next generation technology. These were things that could perform in ways that outperformed anything that we had in our inventory, and we were pretty sure outperformed anything that our adversaries had. We were getting these routine pleas, these cries from the field. In fact, I remember one email very specifically where one of the senior people in the fleet, a very senior officer, basically said, look, these things are all over the ship. I don't know what to tell you. I can't keep people below deck forever and keep this a secret. What do you want me to do? We keep telling them, look, the cavalry's coming. We've got these plans in place to help you out. And every time we would want to get this briefed up to a higher level, we were being basically stovepiped and then cut off. We actually had at one point if you will, a trap set up to collect information on these UAP. I can only talk about it because I've now had approval by the Pentagon to talk about it. It has now been cleared for me to talk about it.
Okay, this is the part where he talks about trapping UFOs.
But we had a plan to set up a real big nuclear footprint, something we knew would be irresistible for these UAP. And then once we started seeing these UAP, the trap would be sprung. Congress is being briefed fairly routinely by whistleblowers. Some of them have not been made public yet. New whistleblowers are ready to come out, provided they have the right legal protection.
That's good. Now we know that there are more whistleblowers about to come out, possibly more UAP hearings, if we listen to Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna.
Oh, by the people who had the material. I mean, it's kind of when they sit there and say, yeah, look, we're happy to have this conversation with you. There's some things that you're going to need to do if you want, more access to it. But yeah, we're happy to give this stuff to you. That's a big deal. That's kind of I'm careful what I say here, but that's a holy cow moment, right? But you could probably put some expletives in there if you wanted to. That's a seismic revelation. Then, of course, you have the material science and analysis that's been done on some of this material, which, look, despite what some people say now, like, oh, this is a missile casing from the 1950s. I know for a fact, because I had a member, and I'm not going to say which company, but let's just say one of the most elite aerospace corporations in the world do analysis on it. And I can tell you that what they came to a conclusion with, and after they actually was able to manufacture at a macro, very crude level, at over $1 million and broke the machine in the process, we know conclusively this was not technology that was manufactured in the 1950s by some sort of missile company. Look, if you look at it temporally and say, well, maybe the Russians have that technology now. Okay, sure. Let's suspend reality and say they do. But they didn't in the late 1940s. And so that would be like walking into King Tut's tomb and, Carter finding a fully assembled 747. I think it's pretty clear that.
Yeah, so he said that before in other interviews, but he's clearly saying there that we do have UAP materials, alien tech.
When you first see Trump being asked about the topic, he said, yeah, I don't particularly believe it. But interestingly, the next time he was asked, he's like, hey, there's something there. There's something to it, right? There were some very peculiar incidents that occurred simultaneously while I was involved in the ATIP portfolio. And I'll tell you, it wasn't just me. A lot of the folks in ATIP experienced very similar things. It was witnessed by friends, neighbors. What the connection is, I can't tell you for sure. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But we experienced, my family, my kids, my wife, some neighbors saw these green little diffuse balls of light, luminous balls of light. Think of a like a think of a volleyball, but without hard edges, right? Floating through the house. Uh, you can call them an orb, I guess. You can call them, maybe some sort of drone or remote operated vehicle. I've never seen anything like it. But like, I guess some people describe it as like ball lightning, maybe. But a diffuse green orb ball, just hover right down the hall and disappear right through a wall. Um, what, if any, the connection is to the UAP? I don't know. I'm just reporting it in the book so people know, right? If you're going to be transparent, you got to be as transparent as you can to include even in your own life, and even if it makes you look kind of crazy, that's what happened. If it was just me, maybe I wouldn't have written about it. But the fact that it happened to other colleagues of mine that were in ATIP, I wanted to share that experience. And again, is there a congruency? Is there a relationship between the two? I don't know. Some people speculate that there is. Maybe it's a small reconnaissance drone or UAP that's they're interested in our weapon systems. Well, they're obviously interested maybe in the people who are looking into them. I don't know. I can't. I don't want to speculate too much because I simply don't have enough information or data. I have my opinion, but at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really matter. If it was just me that saw these things, I probably again wouldn't have said anything. But the fact is, my whole family saw them, and other members in ATIP experienced this same thing as well. So. What the relationship is, I absolutely could not tell you, but it was very perplexing.
Okay. So here's an article on the dailymail.com by Josh Boswell, and it talks all about Lue Elizondo, his history with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, between 2009 and 2017. And they're giving a review of his book here. And the dailymail.com is saying that Elizondo shockingly and unequivocally stated that a legacy program is in possession of advanced technology made off-world by non-human intelligence. That's in the book Imminent, folks. And the article goes on to review the book by saying that the memoir is bursting with other jaw-dropping revelations and claims, including a 2016 plan Elizondo and colleagues hatched to catch a UFO in the ocean. And that's his plan to set off some sort of a nuclear detonation that we just went over. And the book talks about his family's disturbing experiences with green orbs floating around their house. I thought that was kind of shocking also. He talks about these green orbs that not only he, but his whole family saw floating around his home. He also confirms the conspiracy theory that Donald Trump knows about all of this and that he was briefed on the government UFO program during his presidency. There's a cover of his book. So the main gist of this article is that the Pentagon has material from crashed non-human spacecraft, according to Lue Elizondo in his new book, Imminent. Now, some sections of the book Imminent were redacted by the Pentagon. Remember, everything that Lue Elizondo says has to be okayed by the Pentagon, and they reviewed it before publication to prevent unauthorized spilling of secrets. And you also have to also remember that the Pentagon's review doesn't mean that they're vouching for Elizondo's claims either. Here's a picture of Lue Elizondo when he was younger and when he was in active service. And in the book, according to this article, Elizondo describes some of the strange incidents he investigated while in the government. The article goes on to say that Lue Elizondo said scientists were testing a classified device at the White Sands Missile Test Range in Los Alamos, New Mexico in 2013, when witnesses spotted several mysterious and luminous orbs moving over a nearby ridge. Quote, the orbs moved toward the test site, hovered over the device as if scanning it for intel, then zipped away, brashly flying over the heads of bewildered scientists. Later, several witnesses saw formation of disc-shaped objects that seemed to know precisely where the device being tested was located. This occurred several times over a few days, and this is Elizondo that I'm quoting here. Is a picture of Elizondo showing the cover of his book on an iPad. There's also another incident in the book that Elizondo talks about. While he was serving with the U.S. Army in Kuwait in 2003, Elizondo said he had an inexplicable experience. Military police told him a Bedouin goat herder saw a brilliant green flash over tanks stationed at the remote desert base of Arifjan one night. When Elizondo came to investigate, they showed him a heavily armored M1 battle tank designed to withstand a direct missile hit with a, quote, small hole punched through the armored side that was perfectly round, not rough edges, end quote. The tank next to it showed precisely the same sabotage, Elizondo writes in his book. Whatever caused this seemed to penetrate the sides of two of our best tanks with one clean hole through both. It was as if someone had used a super sharp cookie cutter to take a core sample of the vehicle. The energy required to do such a thing would have been enormous. Things got weirder from there, the article goes on to say. He described, quote, implants found in military service members who had a run-in with a UFO. Okay, so that should interest most of you. Elizondo's talking about implants being found in military service members that had a run-in with a UFO. And Elizondo is quoted here as saying, I once handled one of these implants myself, provided to me by a hospital in the Department of Veterans Affairs, where it had been removed from a U.S. military service member who had encountered a UAP. And he's quoted as saying, the material no longer or wider than a joint of one of your fingers looked more like a microchip encapsulated by a slimy, semi-translucent casing of tissue. Under a microscope, it was still moving somehow. And he goes on to say that OSAP/ATIP had also obtained photographs of these sorts of tiny objects from living foreign military pilots. So the pilots also have implants. How about that? So as far as the plan to trap a UFO, Elizondo says, quote, there was an official plan that had support. It got briefed all the way to the Joint Staff, Elizondo said. We had a lot of interest from the intelligence community. A lot of agencies were part of this. They were ready to put their effort and assets into it. And at the last minute, it got denied. Elizondo says, that for me was one of the last straws. I was very frustrated. Despite our best efforts to get this up the chain of command, someone kept cutting this off and saying, we don't want to talk about UFOs, end quote. So I guess that's when he quit in 2017, and he decided to go public and reveal ATIP's existence to the New York Times and the fact that Navy pilots were routinely encountering craft and capabilities far surpassing known human technology. So these days, in between contracting for the Space Force, which Elizondo did last year, right now he's working as part of an effort to persuade lawmakers to add new protections for more whistleblowers to come forward. And, you know, I think this is the only route, and Elizondo believes that also, for bringing to light what the government really knows about UFOs. I'd like to end with an interview Lue Elizondo did on CBS Mornings.
What you're telling me is that UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are real.
Bill, I think we're beyond that already. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
Comments on 60 Minutes by former Pentagon and intelligence official Lue Elizondo put the global spotlight on the government's look into unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Now Elizondo is sharing more details about his work. He is the author of the new book, Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. In it, he writes these crafts are not made by humans, and they present a very serious national security issue. Lue Elizondo joins us first right here on CBS Mornings. Welcome.
Thank you. My honor and privilege.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, even if you don't believe in UFOs or you are someone that definitely believes that there is something out there, you talk about this idea of these crafts being created to, quote, be friends from out of town. What makes you so certain that they're not made by humans? And also, if I could, early in your book, you said when governments lie to their people, all of democracy is at risk. Do you think the government is lying?
Well, we know that the government never lies, right? Iran-Contra, Pentagon Papers, Afghanistan withdrawal. No, unfortunately, the government is not this huge colossal machine, if you will. It's segregated into these little fiefdoms, if you will. And unfortunately, they don't always coordinate and talk with one another. As far as these vehicles not being made by humans, if you will, That's not me saying that. We have scientists, some of the top scientists that your taxpayer dollars have paid for them to conduct this research. And at the end of the day, when you're studying the material and you're studying the capabilities of these vehicles, and frankly, there's nothing that we have that compares to what these vehicles can do, the capabilities that they're demonstrating in front of us, then one has to ask, well, where are they from? And if it's not our technology and it's not some sort of adversarial technology, it's someone's technology. In
a statement to CBS News, the Pentagon spokesperson said that the department will follow the data wherever it leads. However, to date, we have not found any credible evidence of extraterrestrial activity. Are there other explanations that should be considered? Is there hard evidence that this is a non-human technology?
That's a great point. And so I think we need to look at this from a temporal aspect, a time aspect. I think if you were to look at it now and say, well, there's no evidence these things are, if you will, not human, the reality is we've been dealing with this topic as a government for decades. So it's not like there's some sort of adversarial technology that just popped on the proverbial radar that's ahead of us. This is something we've been dealing with as a nation for 60 years. So let's put that into perspective. This would be like going into King Tut's tomb for the very first time and finding a fully assembled 747 inside the tomb. It doesn't make sense, right? From a time perspective, we're talking the 1950s, the late 1940s, where this technology has been demonstrated over controlled U.S. airspace, over some of our most sensitive military installations. And by the way, there's official U.S. documentation that substantiates this.
You know what, Lou, I really enjoyed your book. I thought it was really eye-opening about the secrets that people keep. You make a point of saying you believe secrets have an expiration date. And it seems you and your family really went through hell as part of your job, both physically and mentally. And at one point you ended up quitting your job, and your wife said to you, who quits a job without a job? And you said to her what?
Well, I said to her a lot of things, I'm sure. At the end of the day, I made the decision to leave my job and pursue this topic because it was the right thing to do. And I don't think my family would have respected me if I didn't.
You said a man who can't live with himself. That's a line that stood out to me. But why do they want to keep this a secret? And what do you mean that secrets have expiration dates in less than 90 seconds?
Sure, less than 90 seconds. Well, secrets are made to protect two things, sources and methods. They're not designed to stop, if you will, the American people from learning the truth about embarrassing things or trying to hide things. This is a topic where I believe America can handle the truth. And I think America deserves to know the truth about this topic, about your taxpayer money that's been spent over the decades to try to figure out just what the heck is going on. Look, you have former directors of national intelligence, former directors of CIA, and even former presidents all coming out saying, yeah, this is a valid and real topic and a national security issue.
Yeah, and I think there's so much information in that book.
So that was Lue Elizondo being interviewed on CBS Mornings the day before his book was due to be published on August the 20th. And I agree with Lue Elizondo. I think we're beyond all the speculation. The U.S. government has pretty much told us that UAPs are real. He also made a very strong statement that when the U.S. government lies to its people, all of democracy is at risk. And he also corroborated the fact that we don't have the type of technology that's being videotaped and that we see sometimes on social media that's being called NHI craft. But most importantly, I really believe in what he said in terms of secrets having an expiration date. This secret has been kept by the government for, I think he said 60 years. If you go back to Roswell, it's more like almost 80 years. And classification of information wasn't meant to hide things or avoid embarrassment. It was meant to keep the country safe. So yes, I think that this secret has reached its expiration point. And I also think that we as Americans, we as people overall, all over the world, I think we're ready to know the truth at this point. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my podcast.